They thought she was just another soldier, until she walked into that courtroom, hands cuffed, head held high, and not a flicker of fear in her eyes. The air was heavy with judgment. Reporters scribbled, commanders looked away, and the prosecutor's voice echoed like a hammer. No one spoke for her. She didn't even speak for herself. But then, the courtroom doors burst open. A 4-star Admiral entered. And in that moment, everyone froze. Welcome to Dream Tale, the home of untold stories, powerful truths, and unforgettable moments. If you're visiting for the first time, take a second to like, share, and subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be heard. Let me ask you something. What happens when a system designed to honor heroes tries to bury one of its bravest? Today we bring you the story of a woman trained to be silent, but whose silence spoke louder than any courtroom speech ever could. She wasn't just a Navy SEAL. She was a sniper. She had taken the hardest shots in the most dangerous places, under the most crushing pressure. And yet, the very nation she risked her life for, turned its back on her. Arrested. Shackled. Humiliated. But why? Because she broke protocol? Or because she stood in the way of something far bigger, something the world wasn't supposed to know? This isn't just a story of one soldier's trial. It's a story of courage versus corruption, loyalty versus lies, and how one quiet act of defiance nearly brought down an entire operation built on deception. And when the truth finally surfaced, it didn't come from a lawyer's mouth. It came with the sound of boots. Polished, sharp, heavy with rank. When the Admiral walked in, justice walked with him. Stay with me because what happened next is something no courtroom has seen before, and it's a moment that will make you believe in honor again. This is more than a story. It's a dream tale. The courtroom was packed. Military brass lined the first row, journalists filled the back, and a handful of civilians watched from behind the glass. Everyone came to see her. Some out of duty. Some out of disbelief. Others simply came to see what a female Navy SEAL sniper looked like in handcuffs. She sat quietly at the defense table, her wrists still shackled in front of her, a calmness in her face that didn't match the weight of the accusations. Her uniform was stripped of medals. Her nameplate removed. But her presence? Unshaken. The prosecutor stood, confident and loud, painting her as a rogue operator. She acted without clearance, he said. She disobeyed direct orders. She jeopardized an international mission. As he spoke, he paced the room like a hunter circling prey, pointing fingers and quoting regulations. He didn't call her by name, he called her the defendant. He didn't mention her years of service, or the lives she saved. Not once did he say the word hero. Instead, he told the room she was reckless. That she endangered allies. That her silence since the arrest proved she had something to hide. And yet, she remained still. Not a word. Not a reaction. No emotion. Only her eyes moved, scanning the room, reading every face like a sniper scopes a battlefield. Her attorney had barely spoken. She had refused to give testimony. And to those watching it looked like she had given up. But something felt off. Among the murmurs in the courtroom you could hear it. Why doesn't she defend herself? Why is no one backing her? Wasn't she the SEAL who pulled off that rescue mission in Yemen? Is this really happening? And that's when it hit some of them. This wasn't just about military protocol. This was personal. Too personal. Some officers sat uncomfortably. Others exchanged knowing glances. The tension in the room wasn't just about guilt or innocence. It was about what would be exposed if she spoke. The judge called for a short recess. The prosecutor smiled, thinking he had already won. But in the silence that followed, something began to shift. Because one thing was certain. A woman like her didn't go silent unless she had a reason. And she didn't sit in shackles unless someone powerful wanted her there. What the court didn't know was that her silence wasn't weakness. It was the calm before a storm. And that storm was walking through the doors, very soon. Before the courtroom, before the accusations, and before the handcuffs, She was just a girl with a fire in her eyes and a storm in her heart. She didn't come from a military family. There were no legacies to follow, no medals hanging on walls. Her father was a mechanic. Her mother worked night shifts at a clinic. She grew up tough, quiet, and always observing. While others ran their mouths, she ran faster, lifted heavier, focused harder. People called her intense. She took it as a compliment. At 18, she made a decision that shocked everyone. She enlisted in the Navy. And not just that, she declared she wanted to try out for the SEALs. They laughed. They doubted. They told her it wasn't possible. But she didn't listen. She trained harder than anyone. Woke up earlier, stayed up later, pushed her body to the edge. She failed her first attempt. Then tried again. Failed again. The third time she didn't just pass, she broke records. She became one of the first female Navy SEALs ever accepted into a combat sniper unit. On the battlefield, she was known as the Ghost. Silent, deadly, precise. She could wait for hours, motionless, in searing heat or freezing cold, for one perfect shot. Not once did she miss her mark. But what made her different wasn't just her skill. It was her restraint. She never took unnecessary shots. She wasn't in it for the thrill. She was there to protect her team, complete the mission, and get home. Over the years, she was deployed to the most dangerous regions, places that didn't exist on official maps. She led rescue missions, intercepted threats, and uncovered secrets that were supposed to stay buried. Her superiors respected her. Her teammates trusted her. But higher up, beyond the chain of command, there were whispers. Whispers that she had seen too much, asked the wrong questions, noticed the wrong inconsistencies. And that's when it began. Missions with faulty intel. Orders that didn't align. And a growing sense that someone inside the system was pulling strings. But she wasn't naive. She kept records, notes, proof. Not because she didn't trust her team, but because she knew what could happen to someone like her if she ever became a threat. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a mirror. And those with power often fear what they see in their reflection. So when the day came that she was arrested, framed and shackled in front of her peers, she didn't panic. She knew how this worked. She'd seen it before. They thought silencing her would erase her. But they had no idea who she truly was. And they had no clue who still stood behind her, waiting for the perfect moment to speak. It was supposed to be a routine Black Ops mission, classified, urgent, and clean. But when she received the briefing, something didn't sit right. Her team was ordered to intercept a convoy in the outskirts of a foreign war zone. No names, no faces, just coordinates. The mission: seize a target labeled high value, eliminate resistance, and extract without leaving a trace. But she noticed the details didn't line up. The satellite images were outdated. The intel too vague. And the target? A medical truck. Unarmed. Manned by civilians. When she asked questions, she was told to stand down. Just follow orders. But that wasn't her way. So, instead of engaging, she moved closer, silently, with the precision of a shadow. She watched through her scope. No weapons. No threats. Just aid workers transporting injured children. She radioed it in twice. No response. Then came the direct order. Fire. That single word chilled her more than any gunfire ever had. Because she knew if she pulled the trigger, it wouldn't be war, it would be murder. She made a split-second decision. She refused. She signaled her team to hold. She waved the convoy away, even fired a warning shot near a hillside to alert them. It worked. The convoy changed direction, disappeared into the dust, and the team exfiltrated without incident. But that act, that refusal, sparked a fire she couldn't put out. The next day she was called in for debriefing. Her superiors were cold. Disconnected. She knew that behind those closed doors she had crossed a line. And it got worse. A week later, one of her teammates disappeared, sent home on psych eval. Another was transferred without notice. She tried to contact them. No response. Then, during a routine operation, her gear malfunctioned. Her comms went dead. The extraction point changed last minute. She almost didn't make it back. It was no longer paranoia. It was a pattern. She started gathering evidence. Mission reports, time logs, intercepted emails, even footage from her own helmet cam. She stored it all on a secure drive. If anything happened to her, she wanted the truth to survive. And then the unthinkable happened. She was called back to base, told it was urgent. When she arrived, she was met by military police. No explanation. No warning. Just cold metal cuffs on her wrists. They charged her with insubordination, leaking mission intel, compromising national security. And just like that, A decorated SEAL sniper became a criminal in uniform. But even then she said nothing. No defense. No denial. Because she knew something bigger was coming. And someone powerful was watching. She just had to wait. And wait was something she'd mastered long ago. From the outside it looked simple. She disobeyed an order and paid the price. But behind the official paperwork, something sinister was taking shape. Something she had sensed long before the handcuffs. She'd uncovered too much. And they knew it. The mission she refused to carry out wasn't a mistake in intel. It was intentional, a cover for a clandestine deal between a corrupt U.S. official and foreign contractors masquerading as aid workers. That convoy she spared? It was carrying documents and evidence of illegal arms trafficking, laundered through humanitarian fronts. Her silence on the battlefield had always been her strength. But now it was their opportunity to turn it against her. The moment she broke protocol, they pounced. They painted her as unstable, reckless, a liability. They began pulling her records apart, twisting her medals into red flags. Suddenly, every decision she made in the field was being reinterpreted. Every mission she led was being questioned. Even her psychological evaluations, once flawless, were quietly revised. Inside the courtroom no one mentioned these layers. But outside, behind secure doors and encrypted emails, a shadow campaign was in full motion. And at the center of it all? A decorated general turned defense contractor, with deep ties to the very mission she refused to complete. He couldn't afford for her to speak. So he made sure she wouldn't. One of her former teammates, a comms specialist, tried to reach out. He left a voicemail. Something's off. They're erasing logs. Stay low. But 2 days later he was killed in a supposed training accident. That's when she knew, they weren't just trying to bury the mission. They were erasing the people who knew about it. Still she stayed silent. Not because she was afraid, because she was waiting for the right person to move. Someone she trusted. Someone with more rank, more power, and more reach than the men pulling the strings. She uploaded her evidence, files, photos, timestamped field reports, to a secure, encrypted server. She made copies. She passed one to someone high in the chain of command, but not just anyone. A man she had served under once. A man who never broke a promise. A 4-star admiral. He didn't respond. Not at first. But she knew he got the message. And so she let the courtroom drama unfold. Let them accuse. Let them gloat. Let them build their perfect case. Because sometimes justice doesn't come through arguments. Sometimes it walks in on its own, dressed in stars and silence. The courtroom was quiet, too quiet. The prosecutor had just finished his final argument. His voice dripped with confidence, a smirk barely hidden beneath rehearsed outrage. She acted alone. She endangered the lives of her teammates. She violated direct orders and compromised national security. He turned to the judge, calm and proud. We recommend dishonorable discharge, forfeiture of all military honors, and maximum sentencing under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Silence followed. Even her lawyer had no more to say. She still hadn't spoken. Not a word. Not a glance at the crowd. Her hands rested calmly in cuffs, her gaze fixed on the floor. The judge began to lower his glasses, about to speak. And then, it happened. The courtroom doors swung open with a sharp echo that cut through the air like a shot. Every head turned. A man stepped in, tall, deliberate, his uniform pristine. Rows of stars glittered on his chest. A Navy Cross. Silver stars. The Distinguished Service Medal. The kind of man people stand for, an admiral. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Even the judge paused. The prosecutor froze, his lips parted in mid-breath. The admiral walked straight to the front, stopping just behind the defense table. He looked down at her. She finally looked up. And in that quiet exchange, no words, just a moment of locked eyes, you could feel the ground shift beneath the entire courtroom. Then he turned to the judge and spoke, calm and firm. She acted under my authority. Gasps again. She was executing a covert contingency operation, sanctioned at the highest level. Her silence has been in accordance with standing non-disclosure orders, under National Security Directive 1487. He placed a sealed black folder on the judge's bench. Contained within is the evidence. Dates. Communications. Mission logs. All classified until today. The judge reached for the folder slowly, as if afraid it might explode. He opened it. His face changed with every turn of the page. First curiosity, then disbelief, then something close to guilt. The admiral continued, this time addressing the courtroom. She didn't break protocol. She protected lives. She exposed a conspiracy we've just begun to unravel. And she did it without compromising 1 ounce of her integrity. Then he turned back to her and quietly said the words the entire room needed to hear. Uncuff her. 2 MPs stepped forward. One hesitated. The Admiral didn't repeat himself. With shaking hands the cuffs came off. And in that moment the room didn't just fall silent. It stood still. Because when truth walks in with stars on its shoulders, lies have nowhere left to hide. The judge held the file with trembling fingers. The courtroom hung in silence as he flipped through the classified pages. Memos stamped with red ink, communication transcripts, satellite images, names. Some of the faces in the gallery had gone pale. The weight of truth had arrived, and it was heavier than the gavel in the judge's hand. After a long pause the judge looked up, his tone now different. Court will recess for 1 hour while the evidence is verified and entered into record. But it didn't take that long. Within 30 minutes, everything had changed. The prosecutor, just moments ago standing tall and proud, was now seated, head down, his confidence drained. Behind him, a government liaison silently exited the courtroom, avoiding all eyes. The pieces were falling fast. When the judge returned, his voice carried no hesitation. Based on the newly submitted evidence and declassified mission details, all charges against the defendant are dropped. She acted within the scope of national defense operations under direct authorization. He looked at her. Not with pity. With respect. You are fully exonerated. This court owes you more than an apology, it owes you recognition. The room erupted, not in chaos but in a stunned wave of realization. Military officers stood up, some saluting. Journalists scrambled to rewrite their headlines. Even the guards by the door straightened their posture. And yet she remained calm. So, like a soldier who's walked through worse and knows peace only comes in fragments. But the Admiral wasn't done. He stood once more and addressed the room. This case was never about one woman breaking protocol. It was about a system that failed to protect its own. A system that allowed corruption to hide behind titles and ranks. She didn't just follow orders, she followed her conscience. And that takes more courage than most of us will ever know. He paused, then added, an internal investigation has already begun. Several officials are being questioned. More will follow. It was a rare sight, a courtroom of hardened military men, silenced by honor. And as for her? She never asked for applause. She didn't take a victory lap. She simply stood up, straightened her uniform and nodded once, to the judge, to the Admiral, to the truth. Because her mission had never been about winning. It had always been about doing what was right even when the world got it wrong. And now, the world was finally catching up. The handcuffs were gone. But the weight of what she carried? That never leaves so easily. She walked out of that courtroom not as a prisoner, not as a defendant, but as a warrior who had faced the system and refused to flinch. No victory parade waited outside. No cameras flashing, no speeches prepared. She didn't want any of that. She didn't need it. But something else did happen. A few days later, deep inside a restricted naval base, a private ceremony was held. No press. No audience. Just a few high-ranking officials, her closest teammates, and the Admiral who never forgot her. She stood in dress blues, shoulders squared, eyes locked forward. The Admiral spoke briefly, just a few words, but they echoed loud in the quiet hangar. For uncommon valor. For unwavering loyalty to the mission, the truth, and the greater good. For reminding us what honor looks like when no one's watching. Then he stepped forward, opened a small velvet case, and pinned a medal she was never meant to receive onto her uniform. It wasn't for the mission that sparked the court case. It was for the years of service that led up to that moment. The silent victories, the missions that saved lives but never made headlines, the choices that cost her dearly. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She simply turned, saluted, and walked away. Back into the shadows she'd always belonged to. Her story became legend inside the walls of the Navy. Not because she shouted it, but because others whispered it, passed it down, remembered her name. They say she never returned to combat. Not because she couldn't, but because she had done enough. Instead, she trained the next generation. She taught them precision, patience, integrity. And most of all, she taught them this. A real sniper doesn't need to be seen. And a real hero doesn't need to be heard. She faded from the spotlight like a ghost. But those who know, know. She didn't just survive betrayal. She redefined what it meant to serve. And in a world full of noise, her silence remains the loudest truth of all. Sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't the ones shouted from rooftops. They're the ones carried quietly with dignity by people who never asked to be called heroes, but earned the title anyway. What happened in that courtroom wasn't just about justice. It was about how far people will go to silence the truth, and how far one woman was willing to go to protect it. She didn't fight for fame. She didn't retaliate with rage. She chose restraint over revenge, honor over ego, duty over comfort. And that's what makes her story unforgettable. Think about it. Would you have stayed silent if the world turned against you? Would you risk everything to expose something no one else wanted to see? Because that's what she did. And in doing so, she reminded us all that integrity doesn't need a spotlight. It just needs someone brave enough to carry it. Here at Dream Tale, we bring you more than just stories. We bring you moments that make you feel, question, and remember. If this story moved you, taught you something, or made you pause, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got more powerful, true-inspired tales coming your way. And hey, drop a comment below. Tell us what part of this story hit you hardest. Was it her silence? Her strength? Or that moment the Admiral walked in and everything stopped? Your voice matters here. And your support helps us keep telling stories that matter. Until next time, stay strong, stay honest, and never underestimate the quiet ones. This is Dream Tale, where every story carries a heartbeat.